My grandmother left me $7 million. At least, that's what I believed. The lawyer had read the will only 3 hours earlier. I could still hear his voice echoing in my mind as I drove away from the funeral. Your grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, leaves the majority of her estate, including all financial assets, property holdings, and investment accounts, to her granddaughter, Emily Carter. I had almost cried when I heard those words. Not because of the money. Because Grandma Eleanor was the only person who had ever truly believed in me. She raised me when my parents were too busy fighting each other. She attended every school event. She helped me through college. She called every Sunday without fail. And now she was gone. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was the last gift she could ever give me. The late afternoon sun hung low over the mountains as I drove toward her Aspen estate. I wanted one last walk through the property, one last chance to feel close to her. But as soon as I turned into the driveway, something felt wrong. There were cars everywhere. Luxury SUVs, sports cars, and several black sedans. Almost every member of my extended family seemed to be gathered outside the mansion. My stomach tightened. Why was everyone here? The funeral had ended hours ago. Most people should have gone home. Instead, they stood in small groups across the front lawn, whispering to each other. Then I spotted my cousin Rick. He stood on the front steps wearing an expensive navy blue suit. His arms were folded, and a smug smile stretched across his face. The moment he saw me, his smile widened. That was when I knew something was very wrong. I parked my car and stepped out. The conversations immediately stopped. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. Nobody smiled. Nobody waved. It felt less like a family gathering and more like a courtroom. Rick slowly walked down the steps. Emily, he said. His voice was almost cheerful. I hated it. What's going on? I asked. Rick chuckled. You haven't heard yet? Heard what? The smile never left his face. You're not getting the inheritance. For a second, I genuinely thought he was joking. Then I realized nobody else was laughing. My heart skipped. What are you talking about? Rick reached into a leather folder and pulled out several documents. He handed them to me. Read it yourself. My hands trembled as I took the papers. At the top was a title, Last Will and Testament. I frowned. This wasn't the document the lawyer had shown us earlier. I quickly scanned the pages. Then my blood turned cold. According to this version of the will, Grandma Eleanor had changed everything 6 months before her death. Instead of leaving her estate to me, she had left everything to Rick. Everything. The mansion, the investments, the trust funds, every dollar. $7 million. Gone. What is this? I whispered. Rick shrugged. The updated will. That's impossible. Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. My Aunt Linda stepped forward. I'm sorry, Emily. I looked at her. You knew about this? She avoided my eyes. Everyone did. Everyone except me. My chest tightened. No. I shook my head. No, this isn't real. Rick smiled again. It is real. Grandma would never do this. Oh, but she did. The confidence in his voice made me furious. I marched toward the house. I want to speak to Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer. Rick stepped in front of me. You can't move. He's already gone. I stared at him. Something wasn't right. Grandma had always disliked Rick. Everyone knew it. He borrowed money constantly. He lied. He cheated. He manipulated people. She trusted him about as much as she trusted a rattlesnake. There was no universe where she would leave him everything. Unless, my mind froze. Unless the will was fake. I looked back at the papers. The signature looked real, but something about it bothered me. Then I noticed the date. 6 months earlier. My stomach dropped. 6 months ago, Grandma had been hospitalized after a minor stroke. Her memory had been inconsistent. Some days she forgot what she ate for breakfast. Other days she couldn't remember what year it was. A cold realization hit me. Rick had taken advantage of her. You forged this. His smile vanished for just a second. Then it returned. Be careful, Emily. You forged it. Several relatives immediately looked away. That reaction told me everything. They suspected it too, but nobody wanted to say it because Rick was winning, and people love winners, even dishonest ones. Rick stepped closer. You have two options. I crossed my arms. I'm listening. You can accept reality and leave peacefully. And the second option? You can fight. His smile widened again. But you'll lose. The arrogance in his voice made my blood boil. I looked around at the family. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. Nobody stood beside me. After everything Grandma had done for them, after years of generosity, they were choosing Rick, the man who had barely visited her, the man who only showed up when he needed money. I suddenly felt very alone. But then I remembered something. A conversation from 2 months earlier. Grandma and I had been sitting on the porch watching the sunset. She had looked at me and smiled. Emily. Yes, Grandma. If anything ever happens to me. I laughed. Don't talk like that. She squeezed my hand. Promise me something. What? Trust your instincts. I frowned. What does that mean? Her expression turned serious. Some people only show their true faces when money appears. At the time, I thought she was talking about distant relatives. Now I wasn't so sure. Maybe she had been warning me. Maybe she already knew someone was planning something. My heart pounded. I folded the documents and handed them back to Rick. His confidence returned instantly. Finally accepted it? I stared directly into his eyes. No. His smile faded. I'm going to prove that will is fake. The entire crowd went silent. Rick laughed, a loud, dramatic laugh, but something about it sounded forced. You really think you can beat me? I nodded. Yes. His eyes narrowed. Then let me save you some time. I raised an eyebrow. Rick leaned closer so only I could hear him. His voice dropped to a whisper. I already destroyed the evidence. And suddenly, for the very first time, I realized just how dangerous my cousin truly was. That night, I barely slept. Rick's words echoed in my mind again and again. I already destroyed the evidence. Most people would have taken that as a threat. I took it as a confession. If there had never been any evidence, he wouldn't have needed to destroy it. At sunrise, I drove straight to Grandma Eleanor's mansion. Technically, Rick now claimed to own it, but he wasn't there. Several moving trucks were parked outside, and workers were carrying furniture through the front doors. It looked like he couldn't wait to erase every trace of her existence. I slipped inside through a side entrance I had used since childhood. Every room felt different without her. The silence was overwhelming. I walked through the living room, the library, and finally her private office. It was exactly as she had left it. Her reading glasses sat on the desk. A half-finished crossword puzzle rested beside them. For a moment, grief hit me so hard I could barely breathe. Then I remembered why I was there. I began searching. Drawers, cabinets, bookshelves, anything that might explain what had happened. Nearly 2 hours passed without success. Then, while pulling books from a shelf, I noticed something unusual. One book wouldn't move. Curious, I pushed harder. A soft click echoed through the room. Suddenly, part of the bookshelf swung inward. Behind it was a hidden compartment. My pulse raced. Inside sat a small metal box. It was locked. Fortunately, I knew exactly where Grandma kept spare keys. 5 minutes later, the box was open. Inside were old photographs, legal papers, and a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. Emily. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter inside was dated 3 months before Grandma's death. As I read the first sentence, my entire body froze. If you are reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I continued reading. Grandma explained that she no longer trusted several family members. She believed someone was trying to manipulate her finances. More importantly, she specifically mentioned Rick. According to the letter, he had repeatedly pressured her to change her will. She wrote that she refused every time. At the bottom of the page was one final sentence. The truth is hidden where the mountains meet the lake. I read it 3 times. What truth? What lake? What mountains? None of it made sense. But one thing was clear. Grandma had anticipated this. She knew someone might try to steal her estate. And she had left me a trail to follow. For 2 days, I couldn't stop thinking about the message. The truth is hidden where the mountains meet the lake. Then it finally clicked. 10 years earlier, Grandma had purchased a small cabin near Crystal Lake, hidden deep within the Colorado mountains. It had always been her favorite place in the world. Every summer, we spent weeks there fishing, hiking, and watching sunsets from the wooden dock. If she had hidden something important, that was where it would be. The next morning, I drove there. The cabin looked abandoned. Pine needles covered the roof, and weeds had grown around the porch steps. Yet the moment I stepped inside, memories flooded back. Everything looked exactly the same. The old fireplace, the rocking chair, the faded family photographs on the wall. I spent hours searching every room. Nothing. Frustrated, I walked outside and sat on the dock overlooking the lake. The water was perfectly still. That's when I noticed something carved into one of the wooden planks. A small symbol. An E inside a circle. Grandma's mark. I jumped to my feet. Using a pocket knife, I carefully pried the plank loose. Beneath it was a waterproof container. My heart nearly exploded. Inside were several flash drives and a stack of documents. I rushed back into the cabin and opened the files on my laptop. What I discovered changed everything. The documents included financial records, bank transfers, and emails. Hundreds of them. They revealed that Rick had been secretly moving money between family accounts for years. Worse, there were signed statements from Grandma herself describing his attempts to pressure her into rewriting her will. But the most shocking evidence was a video recording. Grandma sat in her office facing the camera. She looked tired but determined. "My name is Eleanor Whitmore," she said. "If you are watching this video, someone has likely challenged my final wishes." Tears filled my eyes. It felt like she was speaking directly to me. In the video, she clearly stated that her estate belonged to me and me alone. She explained why she had made that decision and described Rick's manipulation in painful detail. When the recording ended, I sat frozen in silence. I finally had proof. Real proof. The kind that could destroy Rick's entire case. But before I could celebrate, headlights appeared outside the cabin window. A black SUV rolled slowly into the driveway. Then another. And another. Someone had followed me. The moment I saw the black SUVs pulling into the driveway, I knew exactly who had sent them. Rick. There was no other explanation. Nobody else knew about the cabin. Nobody else knew I had found Grandma's letter. I quickly disconnected my laptop and shoved the flash drives into my backpack. The doors of the SUVs opened, and 4 men stepped out. They weren't police officers. They weren't lawyers. They looked like the kind of people who got paid to ask questions without caring about the answers. My pulse pounded in my ears as I slipped out the back door. The forest behind the cabin stretched for miles. I ran without looking back. Branches scratched my arms and face as I pushed through the trees. Several minutes later, I heard voices behind me. They were searching. Looking for me. Looking for the evidence. Fortunately, I knew these woods better than anyone. Grandma and I had spent countless summers hiking these trails. After nearly an hour, I reached my car, which I had parked near an old ranger station half a mile away. As I drove back toward the city, my phone suddenly rang. The number was blocked. I answered anyway. "Hello." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Rick spoke. "You should have stayed out of this, Emily." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "You sent those men." He laughed. "Can you prove it?" "I have the evidence now." His laughter stopped. "What evidence?" I smiled for the first time in days. "The kind that's going to destroy you." He immediately hung up. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. He was scared. For the first time since Grandma's funeral, Rick was no longer acting like a man who had already won. He was acting like a man with something to hide. The next morning, I requested an emergency meeting with Mr. Harrison, the attorney who had handled Grandma Eleanor's estate for over 20 years. At first, his assistant claimed he was unavailable. Then I mentioned the video recording. Within 30 minutes, I was sitting across from him in his office. He looked exhausted. Older than I remembered. As soon as the door closed, he removed his glasses and sighed heavily. "I was wondering how long it would take you to find it." My heart skipped. "Find what?" He looked directly at me. "The truth." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he opened a locked drawer and removed a thick folder. "Your grandmother came to see me 3 months before she died," he said quietly. "She believed someone was trying to force changes to her estate plan." I immediately thought of Rick. Mr. Harrison nodded before I even said his name. "She specifically warned me about him." My stomach tightened. "Then why didn't you stop this?" The lawyer looked ashamed. "Because someone replaced documents inside my office." I stared at him. "What?" He slid several papers across the desk. "The original will disappear 2 days before your grandmother's funeral." My jaw nearly dropped. "You're saying someone broke into your office?" "Not exactly." He hesitated. "Whoever did it had authorized access." A cold chill ran through my body. That meant someone inside the firm had helped Rick. Someone trusted. Someone with keys. Someone who knew exactly where the documents were stored. Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "Emily, there's something else." He handed me a photograph. The moment I saw it, my entire world stopped. The picture showed Rick entering the law firm's private archive room late at night. Standing beside him was one of the firm's senior partners, the same partner who had supervised Grandma's final paperwork. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't just Rick. It never had been. He had helped ***. Powerful help. ***. The forged will wasn't the work of one desperate cousin. It was part of a much larger conspiracy. And now that I knew the truth, I wasn't just fighting for my inheritance anymore. I was fighting against everyone who had helped steal it. 3 days later, I received an unexpected phone call. The number was unfamiliar. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. A nervous female voice spoke on the other end. "My name is Sarah Collins. I used to work at Harrison and Partners." My heart immediately started racing. "The law firm?" I asked. "Yes." She hesitated. "I think I know what happened to your grandmother's will." Every muscle in my body tensed. Sarah explained that she had worked as a records assistant and had seen unusual activity shortly before Grandma's death. One evening, after most employees had gone home, she noticed Rick entering the archive room with the senior partner. She thought it was strange because neither man had any legitimate reason to be there after hours. The next day, several estate files had been checked out without authorization. One of those files belonged to Grandma Eleanor. Sarah admitted she hadn't said anything because she feared losing her job. But after seeing news reports about the inheritance dispute, she couldn't stay silent any longer. We agreed to meet that evening. When she arrived, she looked terrified. She handed me copies of internal security logs showing exactly when Rick had entered the building. It wasn't enough to win the case alone, but it supported everything I already suspected. Before leaving, Sarah said something that sent chills down my spine. Rick wasn't acting alone. There were at least 3 people involved. The conspiracy was even bigger than I imagined. The first court hearing took place 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Family members sat quietly, avoiding eye contact with me. Rick arrived wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. He looked as though he had already won. His attorneys argued that the revised will was valid and legally executed. They claimed Grandma had simply changed her mind. Then my attorney presented the evidence we had gathered. Sarah's testimony. The security logs. The hidden letter from Grandma. The financial records from the cabin. For the first time, Rick's confidence began to crack. The turning point came when my lawyer questioned him directly about his visits to the law firm's archive room. Rick immediately denied ever being there. Unfortunately for him, security footage proved otherwise. The video clearly showed him entering the restricted area late at night. The courtroom fell silent as the footage played on a large screen. Rick's face turned pale. His attorneys quickly tried to change the subject, but the damage had already been done. The judge wasn't pleased. By the end of the hearing, the court ordered a full investigation into the authenticity of the will. It wasn't a final victory, but it was the first real sign that justice might actually be possible. A week before the second hearing, I made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing the contents of the flash drives again, I found a hidden folder I had somehow missed. Inside was another video file. This recording had been made only 12 days before Grandma's death. She looked weaker than before, but her voice remained clear. "If anyone questions my intentions," she said, "this recording should remove all doubt." Then she held up the original version of her will and read key sections aloud. She clearly identified me as the sole beneficiary of her estate. More importantly, she described repeated attempts by Rick to pressure her into changing it. At one point, she even stated that she feared documents might be altered after her death. When the video ended, I sat in stunned silence. It was exactly the kind of evidence courts rarely receive. Genuine, direct, and impossible to misunderstand. My attorney's reaction was simple. "This may end the case." For the first time since Grandma's funeral, I allowed myself to believe she might be right. The second hearing lasted nearly 6 hours. Experts examined signatures, dates, and document histories. Digital forensic specialists traced modifications made to electronic files connected to the revised will. One by one, the lies began collapsing. Then came the moment nobody expected. The senior law partner who had helped Rick accepted a plea agreement and agreed to testify. Under oath, he admitted that Rick had offered him hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace the original will. The courtroom erupted with whispers. Several reporters rushed from the room to file breaking news stories. Rick looked completely stunned. His own accomplice had turned against him. The testimony confirmed everything. The forged documents, the missing records, the manipulation, the cover-up. Years of deception unraveled in a single afternoon. By the time court adjourned, everyone knew the truth. The only thing left was the judge's final decision. The final ruling was delivered 3 weeks later. I will never forget that day. The courtroom was completely silent as the judge began reading his decision. He declared the revised will fraudulent and legally invalid. The original will was immediately restored. Every asset belonging to Grandma Eleanor's estate was returned according to her true wishes. The mansion, the investments, the trust funds, everything. But that wasn't the end. Criminal charges were filed against Rick and several accomplices involved in the scheme. The senior partner lost his law license. Financial penalties were imposed. Investigators uncovered additional fraud unrelated to my case, leading to even more charges. When it was finally over, I returned to Grandma's mansion alone. The house felt different. Peaceful. For the first time in months, the constant stress was gone. I walked into her office and sat in her favorite chair. On the desk rested the final letter she had written to me. I read the last line once more. "True character is revealed when money is involved." She had been right. Some family members had betrayed me. Others had remained silent. But in the end, the truth survived. Rick had stolen my inheritance. He thought he had erased every piece of evidence. He thought he had won. Instead, his greed destroyed everything he had spent years trying to build. As for me, the money was never the most important part. The real victory was protecting Grandma's final wishes and proving that no matter how carefully a lie is constructed, the truth eventually finds its way into the light.